Welcome into the Wiltfong Whiparound with Steve Wiltfong. It is Monday, April 28th. I'm your host, Josh Newberg, and boy, do we have a big show today. There was a spring game out in Eugene. The number one recruit in America went to go see it. We're also going to talk Texas, USC, and Notre Dame. But guys, before we get going, make sure you hit subscribe because this is the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube, and we need you to be a part of it. Jump on board, hit subscribe. All right, let's bring in the great Steve Wiltfong, and we are going to start with the number one overall prospect in America, Jackson Cantwell. He was on campus in Eugene for that Duck spring game. Steve, what's the intel coming out of this one?
Well, talking to Jackson Cantwell on Monday morning, talking to his father, Christian Cantwell, it was obviously a huge visit with Oregon. It really moved the needle. Jackson told me they have it all. They do everything right. It was just a great experience overall. He got a chance to spend time with players on the team, with former offensive linemen that spoke firsthand about their experiences in Eugene. It didn't hurt that Josh Connerly just heard his name in the first round of the NFL draft. What Oregon offers their student athletes on and off the field from a branding and NIL opportunity standpoint is second to none. And so I think Jackson Cantwell left Eugene as a place he could very much see himself attending college, playing football, throwing the shot put in discus. And Oregon pitched some unique ideas from a branding standpoint of what they can do with that and the resources that they would have behind that. You know, obviously, with them being the Nike program that they are, the folks that he got a chance to talk to on campus that make those things happen. So Oregon is trending up for Jackson Cantwell. I obviously logged an on-3 RPM in favor of Georgia last week because that's where the pulse was, the Bulldogs being in the driver's seat. Georgia's been in the driver's seat for a lot of this recruitment, going back 2 summers ago when he started hitting the road and checking out his favorite programs. I think he's always felt comfortable with Georgia and what they offer and how they develop their athletes and how they're always in contention for championships. But this visit to Oregon showed him that Oregon's on the cusp, the defending Big Ten champs, and everything else that we just talked about. Oregon is trending. Now, Georgia gets one more visit from him in May before he announces his decision on May 13th. He'll be at Georgia again. May 10th, he's visited all of his other finalists. I think Oregon's got some momentum here. We'll see what Georgia does. We'll see what Miami and Mario Cristobal does over the next couple weeks as they continue to push and have final conversations with Jackson Cantwell, his family, and his representations. But if you're Oregon, if you're an Oregon fan, you're very excited coming out of this visit, which was perhaps his best one yet of the process.
A good time to have that best visit. It'll be his last time in Eugene before his decision. Won't be his last face-to-face with the Oregon coaching staff as they can go in-home during the spring eval period, which I'm sure they will before his big decision in about 2 weeks. So we like where Oregon sits with Jackson Cantwell, but they still have a little bit to go. But you put in a new prediction for a top target, not Cantwell. Tell Oregon fans who you've predicted to the Ducks.
Yeah, I like where Oregon continues to stand with one of the nation's top defensive line recruits, edge rusher Richard Wesley, who was back in Oregon over the weekend. It was his 4th visit to campus. They're very familiar with the program. I talked to his father, Jonathan, on Monday morning, and he just talked about how Oregon's already trying to integrate him into the program, integrate him with the coaches, the scheme, the players. The players took him out after the spring game. He had a fantastic time. He feels very comfortable at Oregon, seeing what they've been able to do with Mateo Uiagalelei, who is a projected first rounder next year. That spot will be open. Richard Wesley could walk into that. He loves the scheme fit, the way they develop their players, the emphasis on the defensive line from Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoy. Oregon is checking a lot of boxes for Richard Wesley going into the official visits. Now, they'll have to maintain the lead I perceive them to have, as Ohio State is very prominent in this recruitment following a spring visit. Same goes for the Texas Longhorns. The resources, the coaching, the level of play of those programs also has them as main contenders for Richard Wesley. Texas A&M, he's been there a couple times, has a lot of love for the Aggies, and USC doing everything they can to keep him in state. But I think everybody is chasing Oregon right now going into the next wave of visits.
All right. So there was a couple other big names on campus, including Brandon Arrington, Messiah Hampton, among others. Steve, what else do Duck fans need to know coming out of this big visit weekend?
Well, I like the way it's trending for Brandon Arrington Jr. as well. 5-star, number one ranked corner in the country per the On3 industry, making his second visit to Oregon this calendar year. Kind of similar to Jackson Cantwell, what they offer prominent dual sport athletes at the school, what they can do for them on and off the field from a resources and branding standpoint is very exciting. The way that Oregon has developed players in the secondary, what Dan Lanning's done historically, he pointed to that. Dan Lanning, Tosh Lupoy, working for guys like Nick Saban and Kirby Smart in their career and the way they have Oregon on the rise. Similar to Jackson Cantwell, he talked to former players that were on campus about their experience in Eugene and how excited they are about the program and what kind of fit it would be for Brandon Arrington. I think Oregon is trending up, but he is going to take his official visits, and we'll see where things stand following those trips. Alabama's had momentum, Texas A&M has had momentum, USC's gotten them to campus a few times. And so those are just some of the other contenders here for Brandon Arrington. But the Ducks, I think it's a place that he could really see himself, and it was another great trip to Eugene. Messiah Hampton, one of the more electric receivers in the country from the state of New York. Ross Douglas is the lead recruiter. He came from Syracuse, where he was recruiting Messiah Hampton. That relationship has been a seamless transition to Eugene. He's already been out a couple times now. Talked to a source this morning that thought the top three was Oregon, Miami, and Syracuse. But Oregon is on the gas for Messiah Hampton. They're one of the favorites here at the end for four-star receiver Caden Dixon-Wyatt, who visited Oregon twice this spring. They're battling Ohio State and USC for him. And then I have an on-3 RPM in favor of Oregon for Jalen Lott at the wide receiver position. He was at USC this weekend. He's a top target for the Trojans. So Oregon in the mix strongly for some of these coveted 2026 prospects as they push for the nation's number one class. For them to get there, I think they got to land Jackson Cantwell. They got Jared Curtis, five-star quarterback, still in play. I don't think he's made a final decision, Josh. He's got down to Georgia and Oregon. Obviously, he's going to commit next Monday. Between those two programs, and he's having final conversations with Oregon and Georgia. And every time Oregon talks to him, they just point towards that prolific offense, the quarterback development. Dylan Gabriel just went in the third round. Bo Nix went in the first round. Those guys have lit it up at Oregon as of late. High expectations for Dante Moore. The offense is ranked in the top 5 nationally. Will Stein has quickly built himself up as with the reputation of being one of the best offensive coordinators in the land. Jared Curtis sees himself thriving in Eugene, but there are a lot of things pulling him to Georgia as well. These two programs battling down the stretch for Jared Curtis.
Yeah, and I'm reading the Wiltfong Whiparound. My Monday routine is wake up, brush my teeth, read the Wiltfong Whiparound, and then get to work. So I'm reading the Wiltfong Whiparound, and one of your headlines really struck me. If I'm an Oregon fan, and we're a week out from Jared Curtis making his decision, and your headline is still in it for 5-star QB Jared Curtis, still in it is not what I want to hear as an Oregon fan 1 week from his decision. Do you really feel like are they just really hanging on here?
Well, I think that you're excited to read that because a lot of the buzz recently has been about Georgia's trending again for Jared Curtis. And I'm saying not so fast. Oregon is not dead here. Oregon is very much alive. Jared Curtis could very much see him wearing the million different jerseys that Oregon has on Saturdays, throwing for a bunch of yards, playing in a prolific offense. So Oregon still alive. There is to my knowledge, a final decision has not been made. The video has not been cut. The graphics have not been made. He is still weighing on his college decision between Georgia and Oregon and working through his process. And if he ended up in Eugene, I would not be surprised.
Whew. All right, Duck fans, how are you guys feeling about Cantwell, about Curtis? How many does Oregon land? Let me know. Comment section below. Do you think they land 1 of 2, 2 of 2, 0 for 2? Let us know. We got to talk USC recruiting because the Trojans have the number 2 ranked class in America, but they are battling for that top spot. And heading into the weekend, you put in a new prediction for USC. Coming out of the weekend, you put 2 more predictions in for USC. Steve, let's hear about it.
Yeah, could USC finally overtake LSU and move into number 1 for the On3 industry top-ranked recruiting class? I feel like we're getting close.
We're getting real close.
Coming into the weekend, I predicted USC for the On3 industry's number 4 cornerback, number 1 recruit in the country, or number 1 recruit in Ohio, Albert Hill the fourth. He was back at USC for a second time this spring. He's already been there several times, had another great time hanging out with the players, meeting the incoming recruits. The coaching staff continues to excite him about USC. And he said the direction of the program, the pieces they're putting around it, this program will be great in the next few years. USC's number 2 ranked recruiting class is highlighted by what they've done at the cornerback position, landing RJ Sermons, who's the number 1 ranked corner in the land per On3, and Brandon Lockhart, who's the number 8 corner in the country per the On3 industry. To add Albert Hill to that would be very nice, would allow Deonta Lynn to play the kind of defense he wants to play with a secondary of that magnitude and of those skill sets. And I think Albert Hill is a guy that USC could land sooner rather than later. They're battling Oregon, Ohio State, Alabama, to name a few, but it's USC that continues to set the pace there for Albert Hill. A couple of those other predictions that I put in that you alluded to, Kenny Pepe, the touted offensive lineman from IMG Academy, back at USC for a second time this spring. Talked to sources that spent time with him on his latest visit to campus, the number 5 offensive tackle in the country per the On3 industry. I think USC's in pole position. I also have him on commit watch. Same goes for On300 receiver Roderick Tizino. He's from the state of Louisiana, and he's been to USC twice this spring. And coming out of his latest visit, USC is in pole position. He had a great visit, had a good time being around the coaches and staff, talked about the great hospitality and feeling at home. Everything excites him, says USC is going to do big things in the future. I think he's going to be part of that. I like where USC stands, and my RPM reflects that.
All right, Steve, what other USC intel do we have from the weekend?
Yeah, well, they hosted a lot of their top targets around the line of scrimmage. Obviously, we talked about Pepe and the offensive line. 2 other key players at the point of attack, Malachi Lee, the number 1 recruit in Hawaii, and Kelvin Obat, who's a top 10 recruit per On3 in the recently updated On300. We're back on campus. My RPM's on USC for Malachi Lee, but Georgia's been making a move there. Michigan's been one of the front runners. Texas and Alabama round out the top 5. I know USC was excited to get him back to campus as they battle there. And then Obat, Oregon, Michigan, Nebraska, Utah, the other prominent ones in the mix, but USC's been doing a good job there. And then flip over to the defensive line. Coach Eric Henderson has been doing a fabulous job recruiting the position. Same goes with Coach Sean Nua. And Lamar Brown, 5-star jumbo athlete, defensive line target, came from Louisiana. He talked about seeing USC's culture and got to learn more about the school. They're still trying to work their way up there, but some guys that I think USC's really in the mix for official visits. 4-star Mikel Blade out of Chicago Simeon, Ben Boulware, a touted guy out of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Nolan Wilson's an On300 edge rusher from Mississippi. Titan Davis, one of the most highly recruited defensive linemen in the country from St. Louis. He was on campus this week. Those are guys that I would not be surprised if we see them back at USC in an official visit capacity down the road, Josh. Mark Bowman was certainly one of the biggest names on campus. Yeah. 5-star tight end from Mater Dei. Been a lot of buzz around Georgia and Texas as of late for Bowman, but USC's gotten him on campus a couple times this calendar year. They continue to fight the fight. And then Jalen Lott, I think, is one of their top targets regardless of position. They love him at receiver. My On3 RPM's on Oregon, but USC is certainly at or near the top of his list. And the same goes with a couple 4-stars in the secondary, cornerback Jordan Thomas from New Jersey and safety Tyreek Green from the Peach State. So huge weekend at USC, number 2 class in the country. They may try and sign like 40 high school prospects this cycle, Josh. They're in position to do that. The Trojan Olympics was a huge success for them this week. And I think they're going to land some of these guys moving forward, including obviously the 3 On3 RPM picks put in.
Let's talk a little Texas Longhorn recruiting. Really interesting weekend because heading into this weekend, this big visit weekend, I felt like there were some really important recruits coming on campus. The Texas probably a long shot for, but coming out of the weekend, I think they made up some ground. Let's start with the number 3 ranked running back in America, Derek Cooper out of Miami, Florida. What's the latest with him?
Well, first, Josh, I think anytime Texas and Oregon are in the top 5 or 6, even if you have them 4 through 6, we know that they can catapult their way to the top of recruitment when prospects come to Austin and see it for the first time, how connected Texas is to the community, what they can offer student athletes on and off the field, the high level they're playing at, how close they are to winning a national championship under Steve Sarkisian and company, and then the meaningful relationships that they build with top targets. Texas is a program that can surge. We saw it happen with guys like Jonah Williams and Justice Terry in the last cycle. We've seen them hang on to recruitments like Ryan Wingo in the past. This is one of the more well-oiled recruiting machines in the country. And this weekend is proof of that. Derek Cooper visited for the first time. He's the number 3 running back in the land. A lot of buzz around Georgia and Ohio State. Miami's been in there. Auburn's been in there. Now Texas is quickly becoming one of the front runners. He really enjoyed getting around Coach Scott and Coach Sark. He really loves how they would use him in the offense. Certainly Texas is producing running backs at a high clip. And Derek Cooper is one that is now starting to really consider Texas more and more moving forward.
Who else on campus over the weekend intrigued you?
Well, they're the leader now for Kendall Gervil. He's the number 12 defensive lineman in the On3 industry rankings out of the Sunshine State. He told me he almost committed to Texas on this visit. He locked in his official for June 20th. They're going to have to battle. You know, the heavy hitters from SEC country are in play, but it's Texas setting the tone. Bodney Cleveland, an On300 defensive lineman from the state of Alabama that Florida's had a lot of momentum around. Texas is in the thick of that one moving forward. And Texas is in the top 4 for an On300 defensive lineman, Jeraylin McCoy, alongside LSU, Auburn, and Florida. He had a great visit at Texas, loves the fans, loves the environment, the atmosphere around the program. So Texas Longhorns, those are 4 guys that they'll be in the thick of it for moving forward.
Notre Dame recruiting just stays hot. And Steve, you knew it would because over the weekend, well, before the weekend, you put a prediction for safety Aiden Pouncey to commit to the Irish. It's like you have inside intel or something because over the weekend, Aiden Pouncey committed to the Irish, but is the momentum done or is there more coming?
Absolutely not. Notre Dame's got the number 4 class in the country per the On3 industry. They have just 12 commits, a lot of room in this 2026 cycle for Marcus Freeman and company to keep building off the momentum of playing in the national championship game. Next to commit could be Javian Osborne, the On300 running back from Forney, Texas. He's announcing on May 3rd, Notre Dame and Michigan are the finalists. The intel continues to favor the Irish. I have an On3 RPM in favor of Notre Dame for Bastrop High defensive lineman Tiki Hola. He visited Notre Dame this spring. Love where the Irish stand for him. I'm close to predicting Notre Dame for another defensive lineman, Elijah Golden, 4-star recruit. Al Washington, Notre Dame's defensive line coach, leading the charge there. He is out to see Golden on Monday. I like the way that's shaping up for the Irish following his recent visit to campus 2 weeks ago. I still have Notre Dame predicted for maybe their top overall remaining target, regardless of position, in receiver Kadon Finley from the Lone Star State. You got the Longhorns battling. The Aggies are in it. Arizona is one of his favorites. But the buzz from my end continues to favor Notre Dame. So the Irish, number 4 class in the country, predicted for a few more recruits, maybe adding another one here in the near future. The Irish remain one of the hot teams on the recruiting trail this cycle, Josh.
Let's talk about Florida Gator commitment Isaiah Williams because he's the number 1 ranked linebacker in America. And after committing to the Gators, I thought he found his home. I thought for sure that his 4th commitment would be his final commitment. But over the weekend, a trip to Ole Miss. Now his Instagram is wiped. No pictures of the Florida Gators, nothing about his commitment, but there is one photo up of his Ole Miss visit. Any reason to be concerned if you're a Gator fan?
Well, he also took a visit to North Carolina prior to this Ole Miss visit, so absolutely you have to be concerned. And North Carolina just landed one of Florida's most promising defensive linemen out of the transfer portal, and DeAndre Robinson goes in the portal 2 days later, ends up with the Tar Heels. So I think that Florida's definitely got their hands full here with Isaiah Williams. Georgia is another program that is prominent in the mix for On3's number 1 ranked linebacker, number 13 prospect overall. I talked to a source close to Williams on Monday. I expect him to take all of his official visits and continue to go through his process. Could he still end up at Florida? Absolutely. He loves the Gators, grew up loving Florida, has a great relationship with the staff. But when you're the number 1 linebacker in the country, when you're ranked in 5-star territory by On3, you got to be buttoned up with your recruitment on the field. You got to be buttoned up with your recruitment off the field. There's a lot of moving parts with the latter right now, especially since Zay's going to take some visits and continue to see what's out there. But North Carolina got him on campus. Ole Miss hosted him on an official. Georgia is still in the middle of this. Texas Longhorns is a program that's always been mentioned with Zay Williams as well. So I think this is a recruitment that's going to continue, and Florida's going to have to battle to keep this prized in-state prospect home.
Yeah. Early on, he committed to Louisville, decommitted. Then he made an early commitment to Syracuse. Then he made another early commitment to Florida State, decommitted. Then he made another early commitment to Florida. Steve, it's still early. I mean, is there a chance that we see a 5th decision?
I mean, absolutely. Again, he's going to continue through his process. I expect him to take all of his official visits. Dialogue with him and his camp remain with several programs. And again, North Carolina, Ole Miss, Georgia, perhaps Texas are programs that I would immediately point to as ones that I wouldn't be surprised if he visited. Colorado covets Isaiah Williams as well, and certainly others do. So Florida will have to battle to keep him. We'll see where those off the field NIL discussions go as he continues to work through his process, as that'll also be a key piece for Zay Williams, along with finding a program that's going to develop and get the most out of him. But his recruitment continues. Florida's got a battle on their hands to keep the prize in-state recruit home.
Yeah. He might not know where he's going, but a lot of coaches know that when he steps on campus, he has the shot to be an immediate impact player. So we'll just have to see what happens here, Steve.
Absolutely. And that'll do it for today's episode of the Wiltfong Whiparound. Thanks for tuning in. Please hit like and subscribe to the On3 Recruits page for the best recruiting information on the web. And we'll be back on Thursday for another episode of the Wiltfong Whiparound.